I stood outside the bus with Jessica and Trish. It was good to know that Trish had made it out. She had lost her family on our journey out of the neighbourhood and was holding up better than I would have expected. Before getting off the bus, I had traded the rifle for the handgun that Mark had given me. Mrs. Barnes wanted to join us, but I talked her out of it. I did not want her to run into her husband inside, and I knew she would need to be with Carolyn and her other kids during this horrible time. Plus, the three of us had been through a lot together in making our way out of the school. There have been so many people we've met and lost along the way. I know Sarah must have risked and sacrificed her life for Allie, and I'm sure there were many others that did the same for their kids or others, like Clara's parents and Mr. Barnes. "Are we ready?" asked Jessica. Trish and I both nodded our heads, and the three of us began our walk back to the school. We went to the far side of the school by the cafeteria, past the snow and ice-covered playground equipment that was likely to never be used again. The entrance over here was dark, and the doors were partway ajar, both of them getting stuck on the ground, but opening just enough to let us in. The roots must have inflicted severe damage on the foundation of the school. "I wonder how long before more of the walls crumble like the gym," Jessica said. "We'll need to make this as quick as possible." After we squeezed through the small opening and got inside, I pushed one of the doors open as hard as I could. It scraped along the cement and made a little more room for a quicker exit, which I was sure we would need. It wasn't so quiet like before when we were in here. There were a lot of noises of things falling over in the classrooms, along with more sliding and dragging sounds. We figured we needed to try and check each and every room to see if anyone was safely hiding. The first few rooms were empty and didn't have any sign of roots breaking through yet. It was nice to know that there were still some rooms that were safe, so maybe there was a chance we could find someone. The next few rooms on the right had roots that had busted up through the floor or the wall from an adjoining room. They were moving slowly around the floor, crushing into things and getting closer to the door. We moved over to the left side of the hall, and the next couple of rooms were empty. We called out in a whisper in case anyone was in there, but didn't get any responses. In the next room, we opened the door and carefully pointed our flashlights around, illuminating a figure sitting at the teacher's desk. She was staring right at us as he stood in the open doorway. "Miss Casey," said Trish. "I had her when I was in middle school." She stood up and started moving fast around the desk and knocking over some chairs to get to us. Jessica was quick aiming and pulling the trigger, stopping her in her tracks. We immediately started hearing footsteps and other noises throughout the school. "They'll be here quick. Let's go," I said. We ran out the door and back out the way we came in. "Let's find another entrance. This might be our best chance to find someone," said Jessica. We ran around the school to the next entrance. The doors were closed tight and locked, so we had to keep going. The cafeteria entrance was next, and luckily one of the doors had stayed open. Upon entering, it was nice to see that the cafeteria was empty and free from damage so far. Jessica led us into the kitchen area where the kids would line up to get their hot lunches back in the normal days. We had a few good cooks with us at the school, and I was impressed with some of the meals they were able to make with the limited resources we had. Things had been so good these last couple of months. We thought we were doing good taking precautions, having drills and an escape plan. There is so much more we should have done. My hope is that we can find some more survivors and get to a safer spot where we can try again and use what we learned here to make things better. A noise from one of the cabinets brought me out of my wandering thoughts. We listened quietly, and I was sure it was someone breathing. "It's okay, we're here to get you out," Trish softly said. She walked slowly over and opened the cabinet door. A little boy climbed out of the cabinet and wrapped his arms around Trish and started crying. "I thought everyone was gone," he said through tears. "There are a lot of people safely on the bus waiting for us," Jessica said. Then she turned to Trish. "Why don't you take him back to the bus and Joe and I will continue the search?" "Okay, I'll come back as soon as he is safe with the others," she said. "If it looks too dangerous to come back, just stay there," I said. "I'll be fine," said Trish. "I've made it this far, haven't I?" We looked around the kitchen and the rest of the cafeteria to be sure there was no one else, and then Trish took the boy's hand and guided him outside. We went out into the hallway, where off to the right it led to another door outside, and to the left was the music room. Straight ahead would lead us back into the main part of the school. We checked the music room first, and we were quick to see that it was overrun with roots. After going back to the intersection, we headed towards the main part of the school. It sounded like there was lots of activity in the general direction of where Jessica had fired her gun. I was hopeful that they would stay there for a while, until we checked out the rest of the school. We went in a couple more rooms and stopped when we heard footsteps coming from behind us. We carefully looked out the doorway and came out when I saw it was Trish. She joined us as we searched through more of the rooms. Eventually, we came across a room where the roots had broken through the wall and the floor and were stretched all the way across the room. We stepped in to look around, and when we were about to leave, we heard someone. "Hey!" a young woman whispered loudly. "Wait! We are stuck back here!" I pointed my light past the multiple roots on the busted floor to the back corner of the room. The teacher's desk, some shelves, and kids' desks had been set up as a blockade from the roots. Hiding behind the blockade was Katie and one of the girls from Allie's class. "I found Kira in here when I was on my way out," said Katie. "I made it back here before the roots came all the way across." The roots were sliding across the floor and had moved or knocked over most of the desks. There wasn't a good way to get across. "I wonder what is on the other side of that wall," I said. "Maybe we can go in that room and try to break through the wall." "I don't think that will work. It will be too loud and they'll come get us," Jessica said. Some of the roots started slithering over towards us. They didn't appear to have any way to see or hear, so I'm guessing they felt or sensed the vibrations. We slowly backed closer to the door. "What can we do?" Trish whispered. The only thing I could think of was checking the gym to see if there was any equipment that might help us, but we'd have to pass the crowded hallway, and it would be hard to go unnoticed. Finally, Jessica thought of something. "We could try to draw their attention to the wall most of them came from, and then try to have the girls quickly come across." "It's worth a try," I said. "I can slide some desks into them over here, and we'll see what happens." "Try not to be too loud, or you'll draw everyone else over here," Trish said. "I'll keep watching the hallway." There was a medium-sized table over in the corner, and a few desks that had been pushed around. I started slowly sliding 2 of the desks towards the thorn-covered roots, sticking out of the wall, until the front legs made contact with them. They recoiled a bit, and then started pushing back at the desks. I tried to push the desks forward, but the roots were strong and made me back up. My idea was partially working, as a few of the roots started coming back for me. Jessica came over to help me with the table. We picked it up and carried it as close as we could to the roots. Then we tried to tip it over on top of the roots, as quietly as we could. They reacted quickly and started wrapping around the legs of the table. It was somewhat noisy, but hopefully not enough to draw attention to us. I looked back over at the other side of the room. There still wasn't a clear path, but it was likely as good as it would get. Katie and Kira walked softly over to the far end of the classroom. I picked up a desk and got ready to use it to distract the remaining roots on that side of the room. "Wait until Joe drops the desk and get over here as quickly as you can," Jessica whispered. Katie held onto Kira's hand and nodded her head. I took the desk and threw it on top of the roots. The ends of them lifted up off the ground and curled towards the desk, leaving a small opening to get across the floor. Katie took her chance and guided Kira across while I stomped my foot to add further distraction. Jessica grabbed onto Kira and pulled her quickly to the wall. One of the roots started heading back towards Katie and barely missed her leg as she ran across. We all ran into the hole and closed the door behind us. The sound of footsteps was getting closer from around the corner ahead of us. We quickly backtracked to the cafeteria and sent Trish back to the bus with Katie and Kira. There wasn't much left to check in the school, so we told her to stay there this time. "We need to check the rooms on the other side of the school," I said. "Why don't we make a bunch of noise in here and then go around to that other entrance and try to quickly check the rest of the rooms?" "Good idea," said Jessica. "Let's make some noise." We worked together and made a loud ruckus by tipping over 2 of the big lunch tables. Then we quickly ran outside and waited just outside the door and out of sight from the cafeteria. After making sure we heard people coming in there, we ran around the back to the other entrance we had gone in. Our search of the remaining rooms didn't result in any more survivors found. Of course we wish we had found more people, but at least we saved a few more, and now we could leave in good conscience, knowing we checked everywhere. The run back to the bus was luckily uneventful, and we could breathe a little easier once we got on. Arvin started up the bus, breaking the silence of the very early morning. As we drove out of the parking lot and over by the school, a bunch of people emerged through the open doors, and then stood watching us. They didn't try chasing us. They just watched us go by. We turned on the road in the opposite direction from which we came to the school. I was sitting next to Allie with my arm around her. Jessica sat with Clara in front of us. Looking around the bus, I saw that no one was alone. Trish was with the boy we saved, Katie was with Kira, and others were sitting together and helping those who lost someone. Arvin took the bus slowly down the road as the sun came up. The roads were covered in a few inches of snow, which the bus seemed to handle pretty well. With no salt trucks coming through anymore, we would have to be extra careful. Brian was in the front seat helping Arvin be on the lookout for any danger. The bus turned left to get us towards the freeway when Brian shouted, "Look out!" Arvin slammed on the brakes and the bus slid towards a long ditch that stretched across the road. It was filled with thick roots, which started moving towards the bus. As soon as the bus stopped, Arvin put it in reverse and quickly took us back before the roots got to us. We had to turn right, sending us further away from the freeway. I heard some people calling out on the walkie-talkies to see if anyone was nearby. There was no AM/FM radio on the bus, and still no cell phone signal. A two-way radio was on the bus, so the drivers and school could communicate. Arvin called out on that regularly too, but it didn't get any responses. We drove for a few minutes down this road until we came to a T-junction. Arvin stopped the bus and waved me and Jessica over. Then he called out for Laura, who was sitting near the back. It was nice that everyone from our nightly meetings had made it out. "What do you think?" Arvin asked. To the right would take us south and closer to the main roads, and to the left would take us north towards more sparsely populated houses and lots of trees. Jessica spoke up and said, "I think we should go left. It is pretty open to the right, and the routes seem to be less concentrated where there are a lot of trees. Maybe if we head north it'll be safer." "Sounds good to me," said Brian. "We can keep trying the radios as we go. There's got to be more people out there." Laura and I nodded in agreement, and Arvin put the bus back in gear and headed left. He went extra slow down the hilly and winding road. There were no tire tracks at all, so it was difficult to tell where we were on the road. We didn't have to worry about oncoming traffic at least. The road seemed to go on forever without seeing much. Both sides were lined with trees, and we passed the occasional house. After a few more minutes of driving, we came over a hill and were coming up to a roundabout. They started replacing a lot of the traffic lights with these over the past few years. I liked them a lot, except for when I was stuck behind someone who was too afraid to go. Though in their defence, some people flew through these things way too fast. "Hey, what's that?" Arvin asked. I looked out the window. There was some huge piles of snow right within the roundabout ahead. As we got closer, parts of the cars were visible under the snow. They must have been there for a while to have that much snow covering them. The only direction to safely go was to the right. The snow-covered cars were blocking the rest of the road. Arvin took the turn slowly and made it up the hill. A pavement end sign greeted us after about half a mile. We bumped through the snow on the dirt road, with even more trees flanking the sides of the road. A street was coming up on the left, and Arvin hit the brakes as we went past it. "There's tire tracks," he yelled. When the bus came to a stop, I went up to the front. Sure enough, the snow was matted down in what appeared to be multiple sets of tire tracks. "Is there a way to tell which direction they were headed?" asked Brian. I didn't know if there was an easy way to tell, but I started getting my hat and gloves back on, so we could go investigate.